Okay, so again, welcome to another session for our computational thinking course. We're so glad that you could join us this evening and take a moment or take some time out of your day to really think about computational thinking and computer science. And we are so pleased to announce our guest speaker this afternoon. Her name is Apars Walia, and she is a freshman at the University of Washington studying computer science and engineering. She has an amazing story. I was very fortunate to be in the audience and hear her present at the Washington STEM Summit last December, so December of 2016. And she was such a compelling young lady. I reached out to her to see if she would want to join us for our computational thinking course. She's a remarkable person. As a high school student, she was actively involved with Washington Mesa at Highline College, and programs like Mesa really provided her with a supportive community and ignited her passion for STEM. And she's very enthusiastic about exploring how technology can facilitate opportunities for global education and social connectivity. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Apars and say thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. What a privilege to have you joining us this afternoon.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And thank you, Sherry, for that lovely introduction. And so, yeah, like Sherry said, I'm a student at the University of Washington. I'm a freshman, but I do have junior standing because of my credits as a Running Start student at Highline College. So I'm really just passionate about increasing diversity in STEM because I think it is such a valuable field, and especially computer science. All STEM fields in general can be applied to such a wide variety of subjects that even like you can combine STEM with almost every field there is, and the possibilities with STEM are so great that I'm really passionate about increasing the awareness that STEM isn't just for a limited certain type of person. STEM, really anyone can study STEM. It's really not hard if you are passionate about it. And so I'm all about increasing diversity because most often the people who belong to underrepresented minority groups often feel like they do not have the skills or abilities to pursue STEM fields, when often that could not be far from the truth. And so it's really important to, I think, in my opinion, to tell everyone that everyone is just as capable of doing a STEM major, even computer science. There's always a stigma around computer science that it's only for guys in their late teens and in black hoodies. Those are the only people who code. It's really not true. Anyone can code and anyone can study STEM. And I'm really just passionate about telling people that and decreasing the stigma around STEM.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. So I remember when I was sitting in the audience and listening to you speak at Washington STEM Summit, one of the things that really struck me was your personal story and a little bit about your background in high school and even before that, and how you got interested and encouraged into STEM, but more specifically computer science. So if you could tell us a little bit about your story, that would be great.
Of course. So I was born in suburban India. So I was fortunately born in a part of town or part of the country that is considerably developed, but I was still surrounded by rural areas. And so when I was growing up, I used to see the poverty surrounding the towns, and I used to see children who wanted to go to school, but they just didn't have the resources in terms of infrastructure, as in they didn't have enough schools, or they either didn't have enough teachers, or just not enough technology or funding. Whatever the case might be, there were so many students who were so passionate about going to school, but they simply didn't have the resources around them. And so I my family moved out of the country, and so we immigrated to the United States a couple of years ago. And so ever since then, I've just been really passionate about using computer science to create a more to advance technology in underprivileged areas of the world, so that everyone has. My ultimate goal is to increase access to education in all areas of the world, because I feel like we should democratize education. We shouldn't leave it to a certain group of people. Everyone who has a passion and everyone who wants to study should be able to study. So the main reason I got into computer science was the fact that computer science had such a great potential to help these rural areas and to connect them to the rest of the world. And just the fact that the limits of computer science are really just, they don't exist. It really, you can do anything with it. And so I'm just really passionate. And so the main reason I'm studying computer science is to increase education in underserved areas of the world.
Wow, thank you so much. So inspiring. So tell us about, so I know you're a freshman, but you have been accepted into the computer science and engineering department. So how does that happen as a freshman?
So every year with freshman applicants, the UW computer science department selects a certain group of students who show potential in the CS field, and they admit them directly. So it's a program called direct admission, and I was fortunate enough to be accepted by it. Computer science is rapidly one of the most demanded majors by freshmen when coming in, and unfortunately here as well, space is so very limited due to funding and so many other reasons. And so unfortunately only a certain group of people get accepted every year, and so fortunately I was fortunate enough to be a part of that group this year.
Yeah, well, congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. So, and I know you're also in the throes of finals right now, so we doubly appreciate your commitment and your time of being with us today.
Of course.
So you did already talk about really what is appealing to you about computer science, and what are just some of the things that you're studying right now? Like, what does your coursework look like?
Course. So if I could divert back to high school really quick.
Oh, sure.
I'm from Tacoma, specifically a town in Tacoma called Fife. Not a lot of people know about it. And it's a great community, but it's also a really small school, and we only have one high school, and the amount of technical courses that we had there were so very limited. And I really knew computer science was what I wanted to do, so I decided to do Running Start, which is college and high school at Highline College, which is in Des Moines. And so I did that from my junior in high school to the end of my senior year. So I graduated with my associates in science in computer science with my high school diploma. And so what I found in college was, so when I started my computer science classes at Highline, I was surrounded by mostly adults returning to sharpen their skills. So I was a 16-year-old girl surrounded by people who had worked in Boeing, Microsoft, and they just returned to sharpen their skills. And, I was really just unsure. I was, thinking, what have I gotten myself into? Am I just really being delusional? Am I really just not capable of doing this at all? And, I can't lie. The first few assignments were in fact very hard. And, the class was a struggle to get into the mindset of being a computer science student was incredibly difficult. But I spent hours and hours, studying up after school, and in the end that paid off. And so then I became a TA for that very same course that I thought I could never pass. And so I TA'd that course for a year. And so now I'm at UW, and I'm currently taking even more computer science courses. And so here of course, so since it's a university, the range of courses available to us are amazing, and I wish every student had access to them because these courses are truly amazing, and the teachers are incredible as well. So a few of the courses I'm taking right now are hardware and software interface, where you learn about how computers actually work. So you learn all the low-level details about the computers, about how they're assembled, and about how they change instructions that are readable by humans into code that can be processed by the CPU. And so I'm just taking a few more computer science courses, and another computer science course that I'm taking, it's actually a seminar, and I think it's really helpful, is it's a leadership seminar series. And so what they do is they bring in previous alumni from UW, and they talk about how about their paths in computer science and their journey from after they graduated at UW. And what I found really pleasant was a lot of people did not have a straight path to computer science. So they originally came in as statistics majors, psychology majors, all sorts of various fields. And they just took a computer science class, never in their lives expecting that one day they'd be working in that field. They just took it because maybe it was a requirement or someone just told them to take it out of the blue, but they took it. And they were so in love with computer science just after one class that they made it their major. And so I think that just really goes to show the effects of at least trying something once, even if you think it's not right for you, because you never know what might happen. Because I'm sure all these majors and people who came in, I'm sure they never they did mention they never ever expected that would happen, but, in fact it did. And, they found that computer science was accessible to everyone, and, they were capable of doing it. And so I think you should always try it and see if you like it. And most of the time you'll find that you will.
Great. Thank you. A couple things as you were talking, I was thinking about that. CS Spark, and how you said being introduced to people who are further along in the journey, and I was just thinking about how that might apply to us as K-12 and K-8 educators, like thinking about what we can do in our classrooms to even bring I'm thinking of elementary kids, like thinking about bringing in either, even middle school and high school kids who are taking computer science courses, because that's really accessible for elementary kids to go, oh, I'm going to go to high school someday, and even thinking about like how we're connecting our kids in our classrooms to kind of that next level up, right? To think about mentorship and that CS spark, like what might really help kids see themselves in those people. So the other thing I was thinking about is, like, as you were talking, I was like, wow, this is going to be archived on YouTube, and what you just said about trying it, struggling, persevering, that's something we can share with our kids, what you just said. I think that's really powerful. What do you see that teachers do to engage kids, and maybe thinking about what happens now? Like you mentioned that your professors, instructors at UW are really great. Like, and looking back when you were at Mesa too, or in the Mesa program, what do you see that teachers do that really engage kids and our students and help them participate in computer science? So here we are, we're a group of teachers, like, from your perspective as a student, like what really helps engage you?
Right. So if you don't mind, I'm going to start with an example from UW, actually.
Yeah.
And so I haven't experienced this personally because I didn't take the intro classes here, but what I've heard is one of our intro to computer science professors here, he does this every quarter. So he chooses a great group of, so in the computer science course, which is the intro course, which is 142, he chooses high performing females in his classroom every year, and then he brings them together for a chat, and then he encourages them to apply for the major because it is really competitive. And so I think that is incredible, because receiving that confirmation from someone above you that yes, you are doing great, you are capable of doing this, it's incredible because so it turns out, so they have statistics, and so women hoping to major in computer science are, even if they are a good fit, they will often think that they're not, and so they will end up not applying, when in fact they could be just as good as their male counterpart. So male counterparts. So what our professor at UW does is he chooses a great group of women who are performing incredibly well in his classroom, and he brings them together, encourages them to apply for the major, regardless of whether they think they can get in or not. And he sends out emails every quarter saying, good job, you are doing incredible in the classroom. And I think getting that little support to a teacher, an email is nothing, of course, right? Because you can just send out a mass email to a group of students. But I think to a student, receiving that affirmation from a teacher saying, yes, I am actually doing great, it's not just in my head, I think that makes a world of difference to students. And back when I was at Highline College, Mesa, what they did was they formed an incredible community around STEM majors. So you could go into the center and you could always find someone who's working on the same assignment as you. And so I think that creates a really good community, because you can find people who are struggling at the same things you're struggling at, having the same problems you're having, but you can all tackle them together. So having someone there with you to share your frustrations with, to celebrate with, I think is incredible, because you are not alone. And communities that, so clubs or communities like Mesa, I think are really important. So if schools have communities for students, maybe after school communities, or in class somehow the teachers can encourage their students, and tell them it's not easy, it never is, but anything worth having is worth working hard for. Mm-hmm. And so a degree in computer science will take you a long way. So I mean, it'll take hard work, but it'll pay off in the end, And the same goes for any STEM degree, really. It's gonna take a lot of work, but we should be incredibly proud of ourselves for achieving. And so I think teachers who celebrate little milestones along the way are really doing it right. So celebrate little milestones, as in a really good test score, a really great project. It doesn't have to be an amazing grade in the class. Just one thing that stands out to the teacher. Just if they encourage their students, tell them you're doing great, just give them the positive encouragement. That will work so well for the students.
Great, thank you. I think there's something we can really connect with as K-12 educators there, and that power of positive feedback and taking that time to give personalized feedback. Also, what you said about community, I think one thing that we see is strategies such as even peer programming. So having, one of our schools has a kindergarten, Kathleen, who's on the call, they do pair programming with a kindergartner and a third grader, and third grade class, kindergartners and third graders. So thinking about developing community, right, and support, and kids being able to get, those kindergartners getting positive feedback from those third graders about how they're doing, and also that opportunity for celebration on what kids are doing well. And I think that's something that is so positive about either, say, things like engineering and applying computer science in the classroom. There's just such an opportunity for developing a community, so kids get that celebration and feedback, both from the teacher, but also peers, and just making sure that the teacher is tending to that part of the culture and the community. So I appreciate you saying that. We're actually going to dive into another resource at the end of the call that kind of gets at some of that. So I really appreciate that you brought that up. Thank you. So what do you, conversely, what do you see happening in classrooms that disengages students or maybe doesn't draw them in? Or, yeah.
So it's interesting because most of these things I think we do unconsciously. So, we don't realize when we're doing them, but we do end up doing them anyways. And they may seem little in our heads, but they end up impacting students a lot. So it was, in fact, I took a psychology class actually in high school. And so what they found was that if a teacher was told that this student was not as bright as another student, inherently the teacher became biased without even looking at the scores of a student, or before they even had the chance to evaluate their performance, they already had an inherent bias against the student based on a superficial criteria. And so I think, and so in the end, at the end of the study, the student actually ended up doing worse in the course than everyone else, just because the teacher was inherently biased towards them. And so I think teachers should always keep in mind about, just be retroactively thinking about the biases in their heads, because we all have them, and it's important to recognize them because that's the first step in eliminating them. If we deny that we don't have biases, we're never going to get anywhere. So whether it be gender, race, ethnicity, we really should not have any of these biases in our heads about which group can be successful in STEM, including computer science. And so it's really important to be actively thinking about our own biases, because that can really affect the way our students are being treated. So they can, it might not seem like a lot to the teachers, but the students can always tell whether a teacher believes in them or not. And so, if you really don't believe in the student is not going to believe in himself or herself. And so that really is just not going to lead anywhere.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So along that same lines, what advice would you have? So thinking back to maybe your middle school and high school tenure, what advice would you have to teachers about preparing kids to take CS courses, either currently or to think futuristically?
Right. So I think one of the questions in the agenda was, what is computational thinking?
Yeah.
And so I think teaching them to think in that mindset is really important early on itself. And so, taking a problem, breaking it down into little pieces, and then, coming up with a list of mechanical steps that you can use to solve that problem, I think is really easy to do. Even for younger children, you can always just have little exercises. It doesn't have to be anything huge, but the small little exercises can build up to a really huge impact. And I think getting students in that mindset of computational thinking is really important early on, because the earlier they learn it, the easier it's going to be. So the reason computer science was so hard for me was I hadn't been taught that mindset before. And so I came into a computer science course, and I just never had learned to think that way, and so that made the course exponentially harder for me. Versus a student, she was actually my partner, and she actually grew up in a high school that actually, focused on STEM fields, and she was taught to think that way, so the course was actually much easier for her. And so I think if you're just really just taught to think that way at an early age, even with little examples, that can actually have a great impact in high school. And so I think, so just have exercises for computational thinking, just simple examples. Even for middle schoolers, it can make a great impact in high school.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much. Yes, because that is something, this whole course is termed computational thinking for K-8 educators. So thank you for bringing that up. what questions do we have we have about 13 people on the call, or 12 of you on the call. What questions do you have? And while you're thinking and typing in the chat window, what advice would you have? So you mentioned computational thinking, but also like for elementary teachers. I mean, I know that's thinking way back in your schooling, but what advice would you have for elementary teachers?
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because people do think elementary is too soon of an age, or age to start thinking in a computational way, but I actually think that couldn't be farther from the truth. One of the programs at UW is, so what we do is we go out into middle schools and elementary schools, and we do little experiments with girls and girls just in middle schools around the Seattle area. And so we try to make the experiments fun for them. Like for Halloween, they did, we made blood, fake blood. And so, it's, for them, it's just really just a fun activity. But as we do the activity, we explain the process behind what we're doing, and we encourage them to ask questions, ask as many questions as you have. We always tell them, don't hold back your questions, ask do not be scared of asking any questions you might have. And so I think encouraging them to ask questions is one of the most important parts, because often we're told if you ask questions, maybe you're just stupid, or, you don't understand anything. You might not understand something as well as someone who doesn't ask as many questions. So this program is called Time to Invent. And so we just go around elementary schools around the Seattle area, and we just do experiments with them. And you can tell by the looks on their faces that they're always inspired to have college students with them. And, seeing females in that area, that, it's not really just for boys or a certain ethnic group, it's really just, so it's a great outreach program, and it really just does a fantastic job at promoting diversity. And, it just facilitates all kinds of learning, and, all the discussions we hold just promote curiosity, and it's incredible.
Okay, so exciting.
Right.
And you're doing so much. My goodness. Also give back, and you're a freshman in college. That's so exciting. So one of the questions in our chat window from our participants is, when do you think is the right age to start learning coding? We have done some basic stuff with kindergarten students from code.org.
Oh, absolutely. I think there is no right age to start learning coding. As soon as a student can use a computer, I think is the right age to learn coding. So as soon as you can operate a computer, actually. So there's so many fantastic programs. Obviously, a middle schooler may not be able to write lengthy amounts of code. But what they can do is, I think like MIT has an open source program called Scratch, and they also have a mobile app builder so that you can build an app without actually so you still use your mechanical thinking, but you don't have to necessarily have all the skills. And so, it really, there's so many resources around computer science. It's going to be tough to find them. Actually now it's getting easier and easier to find them, actually. But, you have to do a little bit of work to find them. But once you do find them, you can find that there's resources for every age group out there. And, so that's why technology is so important is, as soon as you have a computer, you can learn anything you want to. And so there's so many resources out there. So there really is no right age.
Yeah, I think and I appreciate you saying that too. And I know we've started in our early learning programs doing some of the basic code.org puzzles with preschoolers, right, as well as B-bots. So it's a real, physical representation of, and getting kids into, some really simple commands and things like that, and associated with robotics too. So We have another question from Earl. He's a high school teacher in Seattle, and he's wondering what advice do you have on how to thrive in a college CS program? For example, students at a competitive school like UW to succeed in getting into the CS program.
So that's an interesting question. I honestly don't think there is a right answer for it. I can just say what helped me get into the program. And I think what helped me get into the program is really just being passionate about it. I think the admissions committee, there's so much, when evaluating students, there's always high grades, there's always, people can have high grades, but is that necessarily all they're looking for? Absolutely not. I think the most important part to the admissions committee when reviewing applications, I'm not in it, so I can't speak for them, but I think from what I've heard is just understanding why you're passionate about computer science, and I think it really should show through your application. So writing a good essay is, I think, very important. And by writing a good essay, what a good essay is it would show why you're interested in computer science in the first place. Because people could be interested in a field for all the wrong reasons, they have such limited space, so they need to figure out what are the right students for the department and who would really thrive. And the people who would thrive are the ones who are just really passionate about learning. And so if that can show through your application, the fact that, you're here to learn, and grades are important, of course, but I think they're really not the most important part. So yes, showing that you're passionate and why you're passionate is, I think, the most important part of getting in.
Great, thank you. Thank you. We also had a question from Grace, and she said, do you have any digital resources you have used that you can share with us?
Yes. So like I mentioned, Scratch is a great program. I actually used that when I was starting to code. It's a great beginner program because it still allows you to think computationally, but you don't have to have all the skills. So you can, anyone can use it, even I think probably even middle schoolers. I'm not sure about elementary schoolers.
Oh yeah, we're using it in elementary school.
Oh really?
Yeah,
really?
Grace is using Scratch in her class.
Oh wow, that's fantastic. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, that's fantastic. So, of course, yeah. So then I guess everyone knows very well just how easy it is to use, and how fun it is. I think that's the main part, is the fact that, students can get immediate results, and they can see, that their efforts have paid off immediately. And so the fact that they can see the results immediately is great about Scratch. Another thing that I really like is Khan Academy, which of course everyone knows about. They have great computer science videos, and not just computer science videos, all kinds of videos. And so, I think that Khan Academy actually really helped me when I was struggling, not just in computer science, but also in math and physics. It really just is an incredible resource, and I'm so thankful that it exists, because people who may not necessarily have the resources to fund their education could just learn all the curriculum that a normal student would learn through Khan Academy, and I think that is incredible.
Great, thank you. That's a good reminder for us about Khan. Thank you. So, unless we have, I'll give you folks, just if anybody else has any more questions, go ahead and type them in the chat window.
Oh, if I could add really quick.
Sure.
I just realized this might not necessarily be the best resources, I know, for elementary schools, but for high schoolers, there's websites like Coursera and Udacity, and so those are for a bit older students, but there's courses from top universities like University of Washington, Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, just courses from those universities are being offered online for free. And so you could take them and learn all this, be a part of a course without actually being in the university. So I wish I had known that in high school, and if I had, I would have used it every day. So they just have an incredible range of courses that I think every high schooler should check out.
Also, I want to add on to that, thinking about us as adult learners, and for many of us in the K-8 space in particular, we do not have CS backgrounds or have a specialty in that. So thinking about what's out there online that we can access either at very low cost or free from really top universities, because a lot of universities have their like CS 50 course online, and it's meant to be really accessible, which I think is a great avenue for us as educators who are trying to learn, like improve and increase our own skills as we learn a new discipline that we're folding into our school day. So I appreciate you reminding us of that. Thank you. Yes. Great comment. Earl said, thanks for stressing the importance of communications and expressing yourself through your application. Writing is a key skill and a successful for a programmer in industry and academia. So yes, keeping in mind that that communication skills are essential as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, because when I was in high school, I was always sort of annoyed. I hate to say this, sort of annoyed about having to take courses outside of STEM. I was like, I do not want to take English. I really do not see the point of taking pre-AP when I really just want to major in STEM. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. Education in the arts mixed with a degree in STEM is really just the best combination there can be. And so, it's easy to overlook the human aspects of a degree, but, having those people skills is just as important as having the technical skills. And, I think it really should be emphasized to students that even though they might not see the exact reason for the balanced curriculum that they have, it really is there for a reason. And maybe someone who has someone who has a college degree, if someone could talk to students about how their liberal arts education also helped them in their STEM career, I think that would be incredibly helpful, because I think it's easy to overlook a field that is not related to your own.
Thank you. Okay, I believe I might have, sorry folks, I don't know if I just dropped my presentation screen. Sorry, I'll get it back here in just a second. So, okay, if we have any, I think we might have one last either comment or question before we let you go. Oh, great. Thank you, Earl. He put in the chat some great online resources.
Oh, great.
This has been a fantastic conversation with you. I know I really am taking away a lot of things that I can think about as I work directly with K-8 teachers and in classrooms. But I think your perspective on, as a student in computer science, some of the things that have gone well, what are the challenges, and how your just persevering attitude and really your commitment to social justice and how you want to use your degree in the future is really inspiring. So appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, this has just been a privilege. We really, I think much of what you said, I would love to see teachers actually show some of the clips and portions of this conversation in their classroom, because I think this is very relevant for kids to hear what you had to say, both for us as educators, but also students. So we really appreciate your time and your expertise and sharing it with us. So. And during
Yeah,
finals week.
I just want to thank all of you for the fact that you all have chosen to be a part of this course. Just really shows your commitment, and I really just want to thank you on behalf of all students. It really is incredible to see that teachers, really do care. It's really just heartwarming to see that teachers do care. Of course, I knew that teachers cared, but I didn't know quite the extent that they really were passionate about encouraging the students to pursue some STEM fields. And so, really one of the main reasons I pursued a STEM major was because of my teachers. And I think just the fact that you are doing this, it's really just incredible. And I really just want to thank you all for doing this.